Gracias a Ciudad de las Ideas y gracias a la ciudad de Puebla. Yo estudio el deseo erótico. A veces el deseo que está en casa, en el hogar, adentro de la pareja, y otras veces el deseo que se va a ver afuera. El proyecto mío empezó algunos años atrás durante el escándalo con el presidente Clinton y Mónica Lewinsky, porque me di cuenta que había una diferencia cultural bastante interesante. En los Estados Unidos hay mucha tolerancia por el divorcio, con la disolución de la familia, el fracaso de todas las relaciones, y muy poca tolerancia para la transgresión o la infidelidad. El resto del mundo siempre ha optado el opuesto. Poco tolerancia para el divorcio, para mantener a la familia, y mucha tolerancia para la transgresión y una acomodación a la infidelidad gracias a las mujeres. ¿Cuál es el punto de la infidelidad o cuál es el punto del deseo erótico? Hay tantos. A veces, espero que puedo clarificar algunos. So, why do we cheat? Can we have a little bit more light? Even though we cheat in the dark sometimes? Why do we cheat? And why do happy people cheat? And when we say infidelity, what exactly do we mean? Is it a hookup, a love story, a chat room, paid sex, a massage with happy endings? Why do we think that men cheat out of boredom and a need for variety and fear of intimacy, but women cheat out of loneliness and hunger for intimacy? And is an affair always the end of a relationship? For the past 10 years, I have traveled the globe and worked extensively as a therapist with hundreds of couples who've been shattered by infidelity. There is one simple act of transgression that can rob a couple from their relationship, their happiness, and their very identity, an affair. And yet, this extremely common act is so poorly understood. Adultery has existed since marriage was invented, and so too the taboo against it. In fact, infidelity has a tenacity that marriage can only envy, so much so that this is the only commandment that is repeated twice in the Bible. Once for doing it, and once just for thinking about it. So how do we reconcile what is universally forbidden, yet universally practiced? For most of history, men practically have had a license to cheat, with little consequence, and supported by a host of evolutionary and biological theories that justify their need to roam. So the double standard is as old as adultery itself. But who knows what's really going on under the sheets? Because when it comes to sex, the social pressure for men is to boast, to exaggerate, and to overstate. And the social pressure for women is to lie, to deny, and to understate. Which isn't surprising when you consider that there are still 9 countries in the world today where women can be killed just for straying. Now, monogamy used to be one person for life. Today, monogamy is one person at a time. I am sure that many of you have said, I am monogamous in all my relationships. The fact is that we used to marry and had sex for the first time. Today, we marry and we stop having sex with others. Monogamy had nothing to do with love. It was a mainstay of patriarchy about patrimony and lineage in order to know whose children do I feed and who gets the cows when I die. Now, everyone wants to know what percentage of people cheat. But the definition of infidelity keeps on expanding. Sexting, watching porn, staying secretly active on dating apps, Tinder. And so because there is no universally agreed upon definition of what even constitutes an infidelity, the estimates vary widely, from 26% to 75% for men and women alike. And we are also walking contradictions. 95% of us will say that it is terribly wrong for our partner to lie about having an affair. And just about the same percent says that that's exactly what we would do if we were having one. So I like this definition of infidelity, of an affair. It brings together the three key elements. A secretive relationship, which is the core structure of an affair, an emotional involvement to one degree or another, from nothing to a full double life, and a sexual alchemy. And alchemy is the key word here, because the erotic frisson is such that the kiss that you only imagine giving can be as powerful and as enchanting as hours of actual lovemaking. And as Marcel Proust said, it is our imagination that is responsible for love, not the other person. So it's never been easier. This is to Proust, not to me. So it's never been easier to cheat, and it's never been more difficult to keep a secret. And never has infidelity exacted such a psychological toll. Because when marriage was an economic enterprise, infidelity threatened our economic security. But now marriage is an emotional arrangement, a romantic arrangement, and infidelity threatens our emotional security. In fact, for most of history, adultery used to be the place where we went to look for pure love. But now that we have brought love into marriage, adultery destroys it. There are three ways that infidelity hurts differently today. We have a romantic ideal in which we are asking one person to give us what we've always expected from marriage: companionship, economic support, family life, social status. But we also want that person to be our best friend, our trusted confidant, our passionate lover, our greatest lover, all of that, and we live twice as long. And I am it. I am the one, chosen, unique, indispensable, irreplaceable. And infidelity tells me I'm not. It is the ultimate betrayal, and it shatters the grand ambition of love. 2, infidelity has always been painful, but today it is often traumatic. And that's also what my patient Fernando tells me when he talks about his relationship and how the dissolution that is taking place. I thought I knew my life. I thought I knew my relationship. Now I don't trust anything. How do I know that whatever I believed actually happened? Can I ever trust her again, he asks. Can I ever trust anyone again? Infidelity, a violation of trust, a crisis of identity. And this is also what my patient Gina tells me when she describes her family, her marriage to Martin, their 2 children, and Martin just left on Sunday night for his business trip. And Gina is playing with the boys on Martin's iPad when a message passes. "Can't wait to see you." "Strange," she says, "I just saw you." And then another message. "Can't wait to hold you in my arms." And Gina understands that these messages are not for her. And she also tells me that her father had affairs, but her mother, she found one little receipt in a pocket and a little bit of lipstick on the collar, whereas Gina, she goes into digital archive and she finds hundreds of texts and messages sent and pictures shared and desires expressed. Martin's 2-year affair unfolded in front of her in real time. And it made me think that affairs in the digital age is a death by 1,000 cuts. And then we have another contradiction, is that never before have we relied emotionally to such a degree on our partner's fidelity. But never before have we been so exhorted to pursue our desires, not because they are new, but because we live in the age of entitlement. We live in the era where we deserve to be happy. And we no longer just divorce because we are unhappy. In fact, today we divorce because we could be happier. And if divorce used to carry all the shame, today, choosing to stay when you can leave is the new shame. So Gina, she can't talk to her friends because she's afraid that they will judge her for still loving Martin. And everywhere she turns, she gets the same advice. Leave him, get rid of him, throw him out. And if Martin was on the other side, he would be getting the same advice. So if we can divorce, why do we still have affairs? The typical assumption is that if someone cheats, either there is something wrong in the marriage or wrong in the relationship. That's the symptom theory of infidelity. But millions of people can't all be pathological. The assumption is that if you have everything that you want at home, there is no need for you to go looking elsewhere. And this view, of course, assumes that there is such a marriage that is such a perfect arrangement that will inoculate you against wanderlust. But what if passion has a finite shelf life? What if there are things that even a good relationship can never provide? And as Alexandre Dumas said, the bonds of wedlock are so heavy that it takes 2 to carry, and sometimes 3. So if even happy people cheat, what is it about? The vast majority of people that I see are actually not chronic philanderers. They are often people who are monogamous in their beliefs. And they certainly are monogamous in their beliefs for their partner, that's for sure. But they find themselves in a conflict between their values and their behavior. They often have been faithful for decades sometimes, and they find themselves crossing a line that they never thought they would cross, and at the risk of losing everything they've worked for, and for a glimmer of what? Affairs are an act of betrayal, but they are also an expression of longing and loss. And at the heart of affairs, you will often find a yearning for an emotional connection, for freedom, for sexual intensity, for self-discovery, a wish to recapture lost parts of oneself or to beat back deadness. And this is also what my patient Barta tells me when she describes her blissful marriage with 3 children to a man that she would never want to hurt. But she also tells me, I have always been good. Good student, good daughter, good to my immigrant parents, good wife, good mother, good friend. And now she wants to know what life is like on the other side. And so Martha, she's having an affair with the math tutor of one of her kids. And it could be the tennis pro, and it could be the arborist, and it could be the gardener. The main point is that he has nothing in common with her. He's so far from her life that she can tell me at 47 she's having the adolescent rebellion that she never had. And she made me think to one of the most important things I've understood about infidelity, is that when we seek the gaze of another, it isn't always our partner that we are trying to stay away from, but the person that we have ourselves become. And it isn't always that we are looking for another person as much as we are looking for another self. So how do we heal from an affair? Betrayal runs deep, but it can be healed. And some affairs will indeed be death knells for relationships that have already been dying on the vine. But others will often jolt us into new possibilities. Some couples will merely survive, and others may even experience a generative experience. And that experience is not only generative for the couple, but especially for the person who was deceived, who often says, you think I didn't want to, but I didn't do it. So now that person gets to change the whole status quo and ask for more also. I have been quite intrigued by noticing how many couples in the immediate aftermath of an affair have conversations with a level of depth and honesty that they haven't had in decades. And people who were sexually indifferent for years on end find themselves so lustful they can't believe it. Because there is something about the fear of loss that will rekindle desire with an entirely new trust and truth. So when an affair is revealed, what can a couple do? Now, we know from trauma that one of the ways we begin to heal is when the perpetrator expresses remorse for their wrongdoing. So Martin, he needs to be able to show guilt and remorse for hurting his wife, even if he has no guilt for the experience of the affair itself. And that is an important distinction. And Martin, he has to become for a while the protector of the relationship. He has to hold vigil. He has to preserve the boundaries, and he has to be the one for a while to bring up the subject and not constantly hope that she won't and that he can avoid it. Because if he brings it up, he frees Gina from the obsessiveness and from having to make sure that the affair is not forgotten. But Gina, deceived partners, most important is, since an affair is such an experience of diminishment and rejection and replacement, it is for her to go and find ways to connect with her friends and her family with love and people who give and activities who give her back a sense of meaning, of joy, of importance. But even more importantly, it's very key for her that she not mind the sordid details of the affair, what I call the detective questions. Where did you do it? Did you bring him to our bedroom? Does she make more noise than me? Is he a better lover than me? All those questions that keep hurt partners awake at nights for months on end while the other one is already sleeping perfectly fine. Instead of the detective questions, there are investigative questions that mine the meaning and the motive of an affair. Why did it happen to you? What did it mean? What did you find there? What could you experience there that you could not experience or express with me? What was it like when you would come home? What is it about us that you value? Are you happy to be back? There is one word all over the world that people who have affairs tell me. is that they feel alive. That aliveness has become the central idea for me in understanding infidelity. Often, they will talk about loss and death and mortality, all those experiences that bring up the question, is this it? Is there more? Am I going on like this for so much longer? And it is that sense of aliveness that helps me also understand that affairs are way more about desire than about sex. Desire to be special, to be important, desire to be desired, desire to be seen. And the very incompleteness of an affair, the fact that you can never have your partner, that in itself is a desire machine. And don't think that there is no infidelity in open relationships. Because even when we have the freedom to go elsewhere, there is still something in us that is lured by the forbidden. Never do we know more that we're doing what we want than when we're doing what we're not supposed to. And also, I have noticed that a lot of the people who are in affairs are so creative, so imaginative, so present, so focused. If they could bring any of that into their marriages, they probably would never need to see me. So, every affair will redefine a relationship, and every couple will determine what the legacy of the affair will be. Affairs are here to stay, and they are not going away. And the dilemmas of love and desire, they don't yield simple categorizations of good and bad and black and white and victim and perpetrator. In fact, there are many different kinds of relationships and many different kinds of betrayal in a relationship: indifference, neglect, violence, contempt. So sexual betrayal is not always the queen of all betrayals. In other words, the victim of the affair is not always the victim of the marriage. Now, I know what you're thinking. I have a French accent. In English and in Spanish. I must be pro-affair. But you're wrong. I'm not French, and I'm not pro-affair. And many times when I talk about infidelity or I write about infidelity, people say, for or against? And I say, yes. But because I think that some good can come out of an infidelity, I sometimes are asked if I would recommend people to do that. And I would no more recommend you to have an affair than I would recommend you to have cancer. And yet we all know that people will attribute to their illness the fact that it gave them a new perspective on life. So when a couple comes to me after the revelation of an affair, I will often tell them this. Today, in the West, most of us are going to have 2 or 3 relationships, marriages. And some of us are going to do it with the same person. Your first marriage may be over. Would you like to have a second one with each other? Thank you.